Radio Network.
And opinions expressed by the host, guests, and callers do not necessarily represent the views of the Black Talk Media Project, Black Talk Radio Network, sponsors, advertisers, or partners.
Hi, this is Russell Campbell, veteran of the Civil Rights Movement, and you're listening to Black Talk Radio, a radio station that reaches out to all the people of the United States that deals with black issues.
Good evening and welcome to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed. I do apologize for the early start of the show where we had the technical difficulties, but we got the issue resolved. Glad you could join us tonight. It's Tuesday night, April 24th, 2012. And just some quick notes. Definitely check out our blog section and some of the stuff that people are posting there. Of course, that's on our website, blacktalkradionetwork.com. There's some very interesting stories on there about the Marissa Alexander case, which we see CNN is now picking up on. That's a case that we've been reporting on for about a week now. Glad to see that story getting the deserved attention that it needs. There's also a blog post, Devontae's Freedom Justice starts as today. And that's in reference to the recent rally in Detroit at the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice to bring attention to the case of Devontae Sanford. Very poor turnout to that rally, but it is still getting media attention. It's all over the Detroit news. And, you know, we here at Black Talk Radio try to push it into the national and the global sphere, considering this is internet-based radio. But we wish, you know, more people would have turned out in support of that rally. A post by Alberta Parrish, the typical sociopathic behavior in Black America. And then Sanford City Commission rejects Police Chief Bill Lee's resignation. So definitely BlackTalkRadioNetwork.com. We try to keep you informed, and we appreciate those posts by our members as well. Tonight is one of those nights where you're going to get a very informative interview from Ed Forchion, also known as the NJ Weedman. I imagine NJ stands for New Jersey Weedman, but he's facing a case. He has a trial coming up on May 1st, and we had a chance to catch up with him earlier today and get his thoughts on his upcoming trial, as well as just drug prohibition in general. And he introduces a concept that I've heard before, but perhaps maybe the casual listener to this program hasn't heard, called jury nullification. It is not anything new. It is something that has been a part of Western culture or law for a very long time. It has a case history as well. And so I think you'll be very informed on not just the drug war, but on the law in general. And so let me go ahead and cue that up for you now. This is a pre-recorded interview, so please hold your phone calls off at the end of the interview in about an hour. It is an hour-long interview. We will open up the phone lines and, of course, play some of that great hip-hop and R&B as we take your calls. Welcome back to Black Talk Radio, Mr. Forchion.
All right, how are you? How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm just great. I'm interested in learning about the road trip you just completed across America to promote your case and the movement to end what you have described as the racist drug war. How did your trip go? And what were some of the things you heard from citizens across the nation about the drug war?
Well, the trip went well. I left out of Los Angeles on March 20th, and I arrived in New Jersey on March 30th. I basically took 10 days. I hit city after city, and I was basically advocating the legalization of marijuana as a whole. I talked about jury nullification to anyone who would listen. And, of course, I raised awareness to my own upcoming trial, which, you know, after I got to New Jersey, I was supposed to start the case. The trial was supposed to go at April 10th, and it actually got postponed till May the 1st, next week. So,
now, what was some of the things you heard in your conversations with citizens about the drug war overall?
Well, most people in America already look at marijuana as something that should be legal. And when I was driving our Weedmobile around the country, people look at this van. It's all decked out in marijuana leaves and slogans on it, and people give me a thumbs up. Like every day, someone took pictures. You know, I have pictures taken multiple times a day. I have a Twitter account, and people would take pictures and join my Twitter, follow me on Twitter, and post pictures of the van all over the place. But generally, most people didn't know about the concept of jury nullification. Is what I'm constantly trying to teach people or to inform them about this concept that a jury can judge a law as well as the facts. And in my particular case, I'm arguing that the marijuana laws themselves are wrong, not I. This was enlightening to people. People didn't understand it, so I constantly got to, send people to different websites, especially mine, NJWeedman.com, where they can learn about jury nullification.
Now, if you would, please remind people of the events of the night in New Jersey that led to the charges you faced, which you said you go to trial May 1st.
Yes. Well, what it is, I have to back up a little before that. For about 15 years, say, I've been advocating the legalization of marijuana in New Jersey. I became a pretty well-known marijuana activist. But in 2008, I kind of got fed up with the whole arguments in New Jersey, with the laws in New Jersey, and I went to California, where the laws are much more lenient, much more in line with what I think they should be. And I was actually doing pretty well. I wound up opening up my own dispensary in Hollywood, California. But I still had family at home in New Jersey. And on one of those trips back home, while I was visiting New Jersey, I got pulled over by a New Jersey state trooper, and I had my medicine with me in New Jersey. Now, what it is New Jersey had just recently passed the medical marijuana bill, in January of 2010, and I got pulled over on April 1st of 2010. And like I said, prior to that, I had moved to California. When I was in California, I got my doctor's note. I got a state-issued card from the state of California saying that I can use medical marijuana, and that is what I used. Primarily, I have a tumor condition, for one. I have several different conditions, but pain management, I've chosen to use marijuana instead of some of the more dangerous prescription drugs out there.
If I may ask, I also read that you have asthma, and that marijuana worked well in treating your asthma, and I even read that you were a veteran, and when you stopped using marijuana to treat your condition, that led to a medical discharge from the United States Army. Is that true?
Well, actually, yes. Actually, I got discharged from the Marines. I had an asthma attack while I was in the Marines. I later, I guess you can call it a fraudulent enlistment. I later re-enlisted in the Army using my middle name instead of my first name, and I did 4 years in the Army after my medical discharge in the Marines. But I'll admit, while I was in the Army, I did use marijuana
to treat your asthma condition.
To treat my asthma,
and you were honorably discharged after your 4 years completed.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think that sounds crazy, that you would treat asthma, a breathing disorder, by smoking something. But I tell people that, that's just a recent thought, that marijuana itself is a bronchulator. It has been used for thousands of years by humans to relieve the symptoms of asthma. Hash is even better. That's the concentrated form of marijuana. And I tell you, I noticed it when I used it for the very first time as a teenager, that it seemed to open my chest up and I was able to breathe better afterwards. In fact, I got some of the same feelings from smoking marijuana that I got when I used my Primatene Mist or my Aperlant or any other inhalers that I had used.
And you mentioned that being a recent thought. Actually, there was also a recent study that came out. I don't know if you heard about it, Mr. Forchion, but it was a study done that showed that marijuana users had a substantial amount of increased lung function or capacity as compared to other people.
Oh yeah, it's because their lungs are being coated with the substance THC. And THC and the different cannabinoids, the different chemical components in marijuana are combined, or what they call a bronchulator. It opens your airways. So yes, that's exactly the side effect. That you have, a greater lung capacity. This is exactly what most of those prescription drugs, those prescription steroid drugs, are designed to use. And in my thought process, I'd much rather use the God-grown medicine than these chemical-based medicines. And most of the asthma medicines out there are steroid-based medicine. And most of the time, when you think of the steroid, you think of the bad side effects and things from it. But for some reason, the government wants you to use steroids when it comes to having asthma. And I find it amazing that the substances that the government says that you should use, like I said, Primatene Mist, for one, Aperlant, these substances always have given me bad side effects, like, my heart races, I get headaches, even the shakes. I can remember throwing up before using Primatene Mist. Whereas marijuana, I got some of the same therapeutic effects, that opened my lungs up. I could feel better, and the only side effect I had was that pleasurable sensation that most of us now call a high.
Did you not get the munchies?
Oh yeah, and that too. But those are side effects that people with eating disorders should utilize.
And those undergoing chemotherapy to help their appetite.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like that's a wanted side effect for a lot of conditions, and it's an irrelevant side effect if for any other reason. So what? Eat a little bit more. But for people that are bulimic, or people that have certain eating disorders, marijuana, or the effects of chemotherapy, or the effects of other medicines, like marijuana is great for appetite stimulation.
Now, on your website, it says that you will represent yourself and that you refuse to be another John Ray Wilson. Who is John Ray Wilson, and how is he relative to your case?
Well, here in New Jersey, like I said, they passed this medical marijuana bill that allowed the use of medical marijuana. Well, like 3 months prior to that passage, there was a guy who was arrested and charged with, growing marijuana. His name was John Ray Wilson. He was growing about 18 plants of marijuana in his home, and what it was is John Ray Wilson had MS. But when he went to trial, the judges, he listened to his lawyer's advice. He argued, he allowed the argument to be, certain ways. And the one thing is, in his case, the government successfully argued that he couldn't bring in his medical conditions. He couldn't talk about marijuana or medical marijuana. And, in my case, I'm saying that I don't care what the prosecutor and what the judge say when it comes to that. I'm going to talk about my medical condition. My jurors are going to know about my medical conditions, and you know, I'm saying I'm not going to be another John Ray Wilson, because the jurors in his case never heard of his medical conditions, didn't know anything about his medical conditions. Some of them have actually expressed remorse later because they didn't know it at the time. They were prevented from being informed that this gentleman grew this marijuana for his own use to treat his MS. So again, I say that my jurors are going to know. In fact, I've been fighting tooth and nail in court, and I've actually won that right to present my medical issues to my jury. So my jury
I would think so, since New Jersey in 2010 legalized medical marijuana. So how then you credibly then say it can't be brought up in a now? Are you facing state or federal charges here?
Just state charges.
Just state. Okay, that's good to hear. So then that really reinforces my question. Then, how could the state of New Jersey credibly then disallow you from entering that into your case as evidence?
Well, they tried. They tried.
But you won.
Like I said, yeah, in pretrial arguments, I've already won that, which makes me different than John Ray Wilson's case already. The public in my part of New Jersey, they I live in Burlington County, and here in Burlington County, I've been that voice, that face of marijuana legalization for 15 years. I constantly run for office under the Legalized Marijuana Party. I've constantly been in and out of the paper and the press and different news outlets for my stance on marijuana. So the people here already know these issues, and I've actually recently made it known publicly that I have phone to them. And again, I say that my jurors should know all these things prior to my trial, and I've made a point to advocate or publicize my medical conditions, my opinions about marijuana, in the hopes that members of my jury will hear that and side with me, because ultimately what I'm doing with my case is arguing that the law is wrong, not I. Like, I'm not saying I didn't have the marijuana. I'm explaining why and where the law is flawed.
In a video posted to YouTube, and you mentioned the use of social networks earlier to publicize your case, and I assume you made this YouTube video during your road trip, and you said the war on drugs could be won in the courts. It is reported that you plan to use jury nullification, which you've confirmed here on this program, which is to, would you say, put the law on trial, which would mean what for jurors who may find themselves sitting in judgment of your case? I mean, you briefly went over some of that, but could you go more in detail about jury nullification?
Yes. Jury nullification is a principle of law that we have in America, like we have in most Western societies. It goes back to Old English common law. And what it is a juror can judge a law as well as facts. And a juror cannot be punished for saying not guilty. The jury actually serves as the last arbitrator of a law before it can be enforced. Like, And in this country, the Founding Fathers ensured basically the Sixth Amendment by having the right to a jury trial, by having a right to witnesses, by having a right to assistance of counsel for his defense. These were all put in place to ensure that the jury, that a government cannot get so tyrannical that it could just, create laws and then just punish people. So that's why the Founding Fathers in this country created the jury system, so that no matter what law the government created, it can always, the check and balance system can always be utilized with the jury. The jury can, again, judge a law. And in my case, I think that we've come to the point where most people believe the law is outdated. It's not correct. People don't believe the marijuana laws anymore. People understand that our government, basically lied to us for a long time with their reefer madness. And I think it's time for jurors to start just standing up to the government and saying not guilty when faced with a marijuana violation. And to say that this is not possible, all you have to do is look back in history that the jury nullification has been used multiple times in the history of America when a law was deemed as being, like I said, outdated, not just, in violation of the principles of freedom that the juror may feel. Like, for instance, during slavery, there was a anti-slave act. I can't remember the exact name of that act right now, but there was the Fugitive Slave Act. That's what it's called, the Fugitive Slave Act. It compelled people to turn slaves in. If you found a runaway slave, you were supposed to turn them in. You could be held in criminal violation if you helped the slave. Well, that was the law. But what would happen is, persons charged under that, they basically would argue the law is wrong, and they have a conscience and a guilt, and their own ideas, and they weren't going to turn a slave in. And jurors during that time period, especially in the North, that's what slaves ran to, they said not guilty. So even though every person's being charged with the crime, the juries would judge the law itself and say not guilty, no matter what evidence the prosecutor presented. Later on, during the alcohol prohibition, same thing happened. There were jurors that drank liquor themselves, and they felt that the alcohol prohibition was wrong, and they utilized jury nullification simply by saying not guilty. And I think it's at that point now in the history of America that jurors are going to start saying it about marijuana. Most of us understand now that the government has lied to us about marijuana, for a long time. Most of us understand now that, in fact, in 16 states now, 15 states and the District of Columbia, marijuana is now legal as a medicine, including the state of New Jersey. And the hypocrisy of putting a person on trial for a criminal act like me, like I'm on trial under a criminal statute for marijuana, and the criminal statute in New Jersey says that marijuana has no medicinal value, when we all know that in January of 2010, the state of New Jersey itself passed the Medical Marijuana and Compassionate Use Act, where it recognized marijuana has medicinal value. To me, it's clear that a juror should be able to look at these two laws and find that one of them has to be flawed, and one of them has to not be should be invalidated or nullified. And I think that most jurors, if they had the choice, they would say that the criminal statute should be nullified, and that's what I'm charged with, violating the criminal marijuana statutes in New Jersey. I'm charged with violating them, and again, that statute specifically says that marijuana is a Schedule I drug. Well, we know that the Medical Marijuana and Compassionate Use Act describes marijuana as a medicine, and it would that would be in direct conflict with the criminal statutes, because let me explain. A Schedule I drug. The Schedule I drug are drugs that have no medicinal value. In this classification, it is cocaine and heroin, which actually, in honesty, cocaine and heroin are both used in certain medicines anyway. But
that's true.
The raw version of them, the street version, is they're classified as a Schedule I drug. And for some reason, back in the 70s, the Nixon administration sorry about that. Somebody just walked up to me.
No problem.
But during the Nixon administration, for political reasons, marijuana was classified as a Schedule I drug also.
Which some say for racist reasons, to target the black race.
Oh yeah. If you really look into the reasons and the causes of it, yes, you will find, specifically in 1937, for instance, when they made the Marijuana Taxation Act, it was specifically designed and targeted blacks and Mexicans who were at that time the general users of marijuana in the United States. Later, in the 60s, as the use of marijuana spread to Caucasians through the civil rights movement, and that's basically what it was. The races were coming together in the 50s and 60s, and white kids were being introduced to marijuana, hippies and the flower children and all that. And Nixon, the pro-staunch Republican, Warhawk, he felt that whole movement, the civil rights movement, the hippie movement, the counterculture movement, undermined his imperialistic views, and as punishment, he put marijuana in as a Schedule I drug, which targeted the people that I just named, which really, anyone who studies that particular time frame, the 1970 Controlled Substance Act, needs to read the Schaefer report on marijuana, because at one point, because Nixon placed marijuana in as a Schedule I drug, there was such an outcry that it wasn't and shouldn't be, that he commissioned ex-governor Schaefer to do a comprehensive study on marijuana. And then when Schaefer said that it shouldn't be a Schedule I drug and it should actually be made legal, Nixon basically buried the report, failed, basically punished Governor Schaefer. Governor Schaefer was up for a Supreme Court nomination too, by the way. He never made it to the Supreme Court because he told the truth about marijuana.
Now, I read that, Nixon is also the father of the DEA, which is reigning terror on many other states that have legalized marijuana for medicinal uses. And he used propaganda when he created the DEA to to get the American public behind the drug war, and they still use these same tactics today, in my opinion. But I've read that in reality, outside of the propaganda, what they were telling the public, Nixon actually saw the DEA as a jurisdiction-free police force that would indirectly target blacks, saying you have to face the fact that the whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this, all while not appearing to, and that's a direct quote.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm so glad you're informed of that. What the DEA, what the Justice Department did with the Controlled Substance Act was to replace Jim Crow. The official Jim Crow of the South was replaced with the war on drugs. And the war on drugs has far surpassed anything that Jim Crow could have done. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of minorities that are in prison now, based on and when I say in prison, I should say enslaved, re-enslaved, by our concrete plantation system. And the slave owner, the slave driver, is the war on drugs, the Controlled Substance Act. Not Jim Crow. To be honest with you, you don't even have to fear the guy running around in the white sheet anymore. What you fear is the guy in the blue uniform with that badge on, talking about he's a drug war warrior. He's the guy who re-enslaves.
I would say that's the slave catcher. You mentioned earlier, back in the day, the laws to turn in, slaves who had escaped or enslaved Africans, as I would call them. I like to call them. But then, you got to look at those guys in the suits. That in many states and counties, we elect these prosecutors and the guys who are wearing the robes. They're all part of of that system, that prison plantation that was erected. Because I don't think most people understand, and I've read that the Constitution never abolished slavery. Slavery was never abolished. It was left in place for punishment for crime. Hence, what's opened up the door to the private industry that we see today.
Yeah, when I try to tell someone that slavery didn't end, a lot of people have that common knowledge thought that slavery ended with the end of the Civil War or the Emancipation Proclamation. And I tell people all the time, no. I said, don't you understand? The 13th Amendment actually legalized slavery, but it took it out of the hands of private individuals and put it into the hands of state actors. And
now it's being put back into the hands of private hands.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yep. Exactly.
Earlier this month, I think it was sometime before April 10th, a ruling by the California-based U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said that the Oklahoma Native American Church in Hawaii, which is part of the Native American Church, could pursue its case against the government for declaratory and injunctive relief after feds took some of its marijuana in 2009. And it appeared the feds were going to pursue criminal charges, but to make a long story short, the feds ended up dropping their case. So what the appeal court basically is saying, that now that church has the right to sue the government to compensate them for the marijuana they destroyed.
Right. And I actually have a similar complaint, and I did follow that ruling. I don't know if you know it, but after I moved to California, I had opened up the Liberty Bell Temple, a religious organization, and utilizing the Freedom of Religion and Restoration Act, which that case is based on also. I provided marijuana not only medically but spiritually for people, and the DEA in December of 2011 actually came in and closed down my grow operations and my dispensary, my temple, and again, the argument that the DEA used was I was providing marijuana for spiritual use and not just medical use. Well, that act and several others I know, several other cases I know, the UDV case, Guam versus Vieiro, or other cases that appear to say that you can utilize marijuana for religious purposes. And I would like to see the results of this case, and I'm still contemplating filing a similar injunction against the DEA on behalf of Liberty Bell Temple.
And you mentioned that your temple was one of the ones that was caught up in the DEA raid that has been happening recently across all these states that I mentioned earlier, and certainly California has been the subject of a number of them. And this has resulted in criticism from the Green Party. Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein, she's seeking the Green Party nomination for president. I think she's in a tight race with Roseanne Barr. But she has, on her website, released a statement publicly criticizing President Obama directly because, he is the president. Michelle Lionheart, head of the DEA, does work for him. And so, what do you think about the Obama administration, especially considering the statements he made in 2007 that he wouldn't use federal resources to do exactly what he's doing?
Well, I feel, wow, this is a hard one here. I'm conflicted. I'm definitely disappointed in Obama's marijuana policy, Now, I'm one that I heard all those statements he made in 2007, and it wasn't just because he was a black man was I voted for him. That was one of the reasons why I voted for him. And I not only did I vote for him, which anybody could do, I campaigned for Obama. I worked for his organization because of the fact that I thought that he was going to, if nothing else, I thought he'd vote for change. He may have changed the marijuana laws. But you know what? I would have been happy if he just left the medical marijuana up to the states, like he said. And so I feel like there was a campaign promise that not only did he not fulfill, but members of the government are in direct contradiction of it, and he is not stepping up and stopping it. So I'm definitely disappointed. And when I say I campaigned for him, I actually I did a commercial for Obama with Shepard Fairey. Shepard Fairey was the artist who drew the Hope for Change image, or painted that Hope for Change image that we all recognize as Obama.
The blue and red.
One. Yes. Right. Now, Shepard Fairey got a bunch of Hollywood stars and celebrities together in Hollywood and filmed pro-Obama commercials and put them out all over the internet. And I was one of those people that was chosen to do one, and I was specifically chosen because my message was change the marijuana laws. If you go to obeygiant.com, which is Shepard Fairey's website still, you can still see that Obama commercial I made with Will I Am, and there was a couple other well-named celebrities. So I felt like really, I don't know if I should say stabbed in the back, but I felt betrayed that Obama didn't follow through on the marijuana issue.
Now, Wanda James, you mentioned, doing the work that you did for the Obama campaign. Wanda James, who's a Navy veteran, restaurant owner, Democratic strategist, a former member of Obama's National Finance Committee, and she is also a marijuana legalization advocate, recently said, as reported by YourBlackWorld.net, that it's extremely disappointing to me to have, quite frankly, a black man as president that has smoked pot, that didn't get caught, that didn't get a felony, that got to go on to be president, who is still okay with the 700,000 black and brown boys to get felony arrests every year in this country for the use of marijuana. She concluded, I have a real issue with that.
Yeah, ditto. I feel exactly the same. That's exactly how I feel. I even took it a step further. After Obama was elected, a year later, he actually he put a policy change. He publicly talked about it. Eric Holder, the U.S. attorney, said that there was going to be a policy change and they weren't going to raid medical marijuana facilities anymore in states that had legalized it. And you know what I did? I held a Obama marijuana party, a big mansion party in Hollywood. I had, hundreds of people show up. TMZ reported on it. It made national news, of us celebrating that he had changed the policy, only for him to look the other way a year later when his U.S. attorneys around the country just decided that they were going to ignore his policy change. And I feel, like I said, I'm practically betrayed. I feel like what happened, Obama? I wish if I had a chance to speak to Obama, there's a million other things that are probably more important in the world to talk about. But I think if I ever had a chance to talk to Obama, I would definitely ask him, what happened? How did you look the other way as this happened? And you're one of us. You totally not only the wear the brown skin, you smoke marijuana. You know that marijuana is not this dangerous substance our law says.
Would you call that a weakness in leadership, as some people have stated?
Can you say that again?
Would you exactly call that a leadership weakness? I mean, these people do work for him. He could fire them for not.
He could.
So I mean,
he could replace them in a minute. he can pardon the people that they arrested. You know, he could make a huge statement. I think it's overdue. I could tell he's not going to do it at this point. I actually thought that first raid or two that happened after that someone would be losing their jobs and someone would be, he'd be somehow through the administration there'd be some type of an apology. But instead, the raids have intensified to the point that now the DEA are going after or people who have spoken out against the marijuana raids. I have been raided. Richard Lee, he's the owner of Amsterdam University. They're Joe Combine. There are people around the country who have been openly speaking out about marijuana, about the marijuana raids, and the DEA has responded by arresting all those people. There's a movie out right now called How Weed Won the West, and I was in that movie. Several other people were in that movie. That movie is slowly becoming the arrest list. Several of us have all been arrested, for basically being in that movie.
Or expressing your First Amendment rights. And you definitely would highlight, your constitutional rights. So I would call, the entire drug prohibition is political. Anybody, I feel like, who's locked up for nonviolent so-called drug crimes are political prisoners. And so it sounds like you're saying that these rogue attorneys, if they're operating in conflict with Obama's policy, as you stated to us, and they're acting in this rogue manner. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought where I was going with that. But
that's true. That where you're going is right. That is what I'm saying. That he changed the policy. Eric Holder came out and announced that this policy change. And for a little while, it seemed like it was holding. Like I said, I held a big party. Other people around the country celebrated. There's this sense in the movement that we were finally, going in the right direction. And then these U.S. attorneys hold a press conference last year and say that they were going to start arresting people again. And then they did it.
I mean, that's a human rights violation. I would think that's in violation of some treaties because they're being targeted. Where I was going with that is that they're being targeted for expressing a political view in as so much as they were operating these facilities, which, by the way, were in compliance with state laws.
Exactly. That's exactly the part here. Like, everything was legal. In my case, I was operating under state authority in California legally. I actually had a case. The state at some point had challenged my legality, and then I won in state court. And a month later, the DEA came in and said they didn't care about that. Under federal authority, we're going to put you out of business. They didn't charge me with any crime. All they did was came into my facility, took all my money, they took all my marijuana, and left me unable to pay rent. And
I mean, that sounds very similar. I don't mean to interrupt, but that sounds very similar to the case the U.S. Ninth Circuit just ruled on, and saying that the Oklahoma Native American Church could sue the federal government for compensation for the illegal seizure of their property.
Exactly. That's what I said. But I was aware of that case. I had thought to myself that, with the right amount of money, the right presentation, I myself can seek an injunction also. To be honest with you, I haven't downloaded their exact complaint yet, but I do plan on doing it, and I think that my case is interchangeable.
Do you have a legal defense fund that the public can donate to?
Right on my website, NJWeedman.com. There's a PayPal button right there, and every now and then I do get a donation or two. I've for some reason I've had a hard time getting support. I feel like my advocation out here is not just for me, my personal right to smoke marijuana. I think it's a I'm arguing for a lot of people who smoke marijuana, but it goes further than that too. I think I'm arguing for constitutional rights of all of us, of everyone, and like for the government right now to just be ignoring the will of the people, because the will of the people is marijuana should be legal, and for the government to be ignoring the will of the people and still arresting people, still destroying people, still ruining people. I mean, in my case, in California, I mean, I'm not advocating or asking like to be arrested, put in jail, and to be given a criminal trial. But for the government to come in and just take all my stuff and just put me out of business without charges,
they robbed you without charges. They came straight up and jacked you.
Right, and I call that a coppery, cop robbery. That's exactly what happened. And imagine that happened to a 7-Eleven or a Ford Motor Company, or it's incredible that the government agents just went in and decided that to put me out of business. Like, we're not going to charge him with any crime. We're just going to put him out of business. We're going to take all of his assets so that he can't pay rent, so that he can't function, so he can't, he can't pay his employees, so he can't pay his own child support, so he can't feed himself. That was their intention.
Getting back to this jury nullification, I want to make something clear, or I'm seeking clarification from you as you understand it. Now, again, you was talking earlier, and I was thinking that the jury is sort of like the last line of defense against tyranny, because it's made up of ordinary citizens. And that's why I get so upset when I hear about these crazy cases where obviously the facts are on the side of the defendant and these juries convict anyway. But let's say somebody wanted to exercise jury nullification. They don't have to announce that's what they're doing or make any kind of statement when they vote not guilty. They can just say not guilty and not give a reason. Is that, to your knowledge, how would that be handled?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is exactly what they can do. And a juror can't be punished or questioned. A juror can voluntarily say whatever he wants to say after the trial, but the judge or prosecutor or any of them, they can't question the juror. They can't judge what he did. They can't punish them for what he did. And it does happen. It's happening more and more as more and more people have been made aware of this right and have been made aware of the facts that marijuana doesn't fit these legal prescriptions. Like Johnny Cochran said, if it doesn't fit, you've got to acquit. And that's how I feel about marijuana. It doesn't fit the description of a Schedule I drug, and therefore a jury should acquit.
Now, before I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and one thing that I did want to bring up, since we were talking about Jim Crowism a few minutes ago, that our national black organizations, from the NAACP to, say, here in New Jersey, the Black Clergy Association, I feel that they also have failed us, because they're not recognizing, they haven't recognized that these drug laws are, in fact, racist and promote the genocide of people of color. And instead, they argue on one hand that, the police are, abandon our neighborhoods and things like that, but then they don't say anything how the laws themselves are used to decimate our communities. And I know there was a young lady, right now off the top of my head I can't remember her name, but she was the president of the California chapter of the NAACP.
Yes, we actually interviewed her on this program. I was trying to look up her name as you were speaking on that, and that was like over a year ago.
Yeah, I actually ended up on a couple of talk shows right around that time in support of her too, and she was vilified by not only other chapters of the NAACP, but black clergy members around the country were mad at her. And I just did an interview recently with a columnist in Pennsylvania, where I criticized the church, the black church, the black community, itself for not standing up and recognizing the fact that our drug laws are racist, and our civil rights movement should be as anti-drug war as they were with these these segregationist laws, or the Jim Crowism of years past. Our drug laws have replaced Jim Crowism. Our drug laws have replaced open racism for the concrete prison system, and that's a failure of our black leadership in not recognizing that and not attacking that.
I actually wrote an article, and this is dated August 7, 2010, and this is in the blog section of BlackTalkRadioNetwork.com it's titled Bishop Ron Allen, What Would Jesus Do as it pertains to drug users, and what are you doing? That's an article I wrote myself, and the NAACP president I believe you were referring to was Alice Huffman, and I have interviewed both Bishop Ron Allen and Alice Huffman on this program, and I raised those very same issues. But the NAACP in the past year or year and a half, especially once Michelle Alexander started promoting her book, they have started speaking out against drug prohibition and pointing out the disparities in the incarceration rates and the whole issue. They're also being funded by getting grants from George Soros on the issue. So I do know they have finally come around, but I don't think it's trickling down to the various branches throughout the United States, because you have to also understand, Mr. Forchion, or look at many of the leaders in the NAACP are ministers.
Oh yeah, exactly, and again, that's what I tell people all the time, that the NAACP a lot of time is like be church, the deacons are running the NAACP. A lot of chapters of the NAACP, as their chapter president is also the local minister, and I think there's this huge conflict there, but I think it's because the ministers are confused when it comes to the drug issue and freedom and imprisonment and things like that.
I mean, they shouldn't be confused about justice. Now, let's be real, and these are grown men. Many of them been to college, so let's not be I won't be so easy on them. I think they do understand it, but at the same time, like I talked about George Soros giving grants out, going back to Bishop Ron Allen, who's also from California, these organizations are getting grants as well from pro-drug war organizations.
Exactly. Now, I'm not going to knock a gift horse in the mouth, but George Soros, white guy, Greek guy, whatever he is, European, he has decided that he has the same opinion that we do. Like, why aren't these black organizations, on the side of legalization? And the Ethan Nadelman from the Linda Smith Center in New York made that a priority to get money from George Soros, and basically, I'm not going to say the word bribed, but basically, the money has opened some eyes. People are getting money now.
The funding of public education or propaganda, to use the more correct technical term, which I'm not ashamed to say we produce our own propaganda, because that's really what everything is when it comes to the media. But yeah, they're funding a lot of what they call education efforts, public education awareness, under such titles as that.
Right, and that's a good thing. But it's been a long time coming. Like, I can remember back in the 90s having little conflicts with my local NAACP leaders, because I thought that this marijuana and the war on drugs was a civil rights issue that should be fought by the NAACP, whereas they looked at it as not that, and they looked at it just as a crime issue and something that was correct. And I think that the thought is coming around. Mrs. Huff out of Huffman Weedman out of California opened up a lot of eyes to this issue in the NAACP, and Mr. Soros' generosity is starting to guide people in high places in the NAACP to look at it in a way that me and you both seem to agree on. What's a good thing?
Now, as we close out the interview, one last question. I read on at least one report that the judge scheduled for your trial on May 1st this year has said he will not allow you to put the law on trial. What do you make of that, and can he prevent you from using jury nullification, assuming that's what he's specifically talking about?
Yeah, he has said that, but in many of our pretrial hearings, though, I have won different aspects of my argument. For instance, I'm going to be allowed to present my medical marijuana defense, and I'm obviously going to be arguing the law is wrong. He says that I can't argue that the law is wrong, or I can't put the law on trial, but the Constitution says I can. In New Jersey's Constitution, Article 1, I'd like anybody who wants to look it up. New Jersey's Constitution, Article 1, Paragraph 6. It says specifically, in all prosecutions or indictments, the truth may be given as evidence, and the jury may judge the law as well as the facts. So how's he going to tell me that I can't present the law, put the law on trial, when clearly our Constitution in New Jersey says that the jury may judge the law as well as the facts? And that's what I want to argue. The law is wrong, and I'm going to present the facts. If the judge wants to stop the trial or call it mistrial or try to remove me, then so be it. But he can't, even when I specifically asked him, tell me what court rule, tell me where it says that I can't do this and I can't do that. He can't come up with it. And, me, if he could just tell me somewhere in New Jersey court statutes, just court rules, that I can't do that, I would look it up and I would challenge that legally in court. But there's nothing. There's this long time understanding amongst lawyers, and I'm not one, that the law is the law, and we're going to argue the law, and you're not going to present the law as wrong to the jury. In fact, you're not even supposed to tell the jury that they have that power to judge a law, and that is the problem. That this judge and most judges, they are in a system that has treated that argument that way forever. Like, that's not what you do. You don't argue that the law is wrong. You argue that you violated the law or you complied with the law.
It sounds like to me these defense lawyers are participating in a new Jim Crow with a gentleman, what they call an old boy or a gentleman's agreement on a handshake.
Right.
No.
Exactly. And the prosecutor's office and the public and the judge have consistently argued against me in my defense. And at one point I had enough money that I could have bought, could have had my own lawyer, got the services of my own lawyer, and I had figured that as I got closer to trial, to save money, that I would get a lawyer to help me, to assist me. But as I told you earlier, I did get raided by the DEA, and they basically put me out of money, took me out of business, and took all my money. So at this point, I am stuck with the public defender to serve as my assistance. I still have retained the right to represent myself, but I have the public defender as providing assistance to me. And the public defender's office is, they won't argue the things that I want to argue. The law is wrong. Thus I have been forced to represent myself, because there's no one else that wants to argue. I mean, we can find all kinds of court cases, Supreme Court cases, that say that I, as a defendant, have a right to choose my defense. Right? And I have chosen the defense of, I'm going to go head on at it, all or nothing, jury nullification, and I want to argue the law is wrong and not me. Okay, so if I have that right, and just say I am assigned a lawyer to represent me, then that lawyer should do what I say, do what I want. But in this case, and in cases I've had before, the public defender's office won't argue those things. They refuse to argue those things. So if they refuse to argue those things, I am forced to represent myself. I think it's a good tactic for me to represent myself anyway, because I get to pick my jury. I get to intermingle with the jury prior to trial. I get to present myself in my opening statements as the victim of a bad law. So these are good things ultimately for me. And I think, I'll be talking to you in about 2 weeks in another interview. I won't be in prison.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. I think that's what I think will be happening. I'll be doing my victory tour, my victory circuit next, 2 weeks from now. So make sure you schedule me somewhere for another interview in about a week or two.
We definitely would. But again, give out your website and where people can donate to your legal defense fund.
All right, it's NJWeedman.com. That's my personal website. Stands for New Jersey Weedman.com. NJWeedman.com. I have a book out there also called Public Enemy Number 420, which you can also read about my thoughts and opinions. And definitely I talk about jury nullification throughout that book.
Well, thank you for speaking with me, and may you prevail with your case.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
This is Tanya Free. Moments before a Florida judge set bond at $150,000. George Zimmerman apologized to the family of Trayvon Martin. Prosecutors had requested Zimmerman either remain in jail without bond or have bond set at $1 million. How do you feel about the decision to set bond at $150,000? Go to TanyaFree.com to respond to this week's poll question.
TanyaFree.com. On air, online, and on point.
Race is a very important thing. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been telling everybody, but, they all look at me like I have three heads. Race is a very, very important thing in America, and it only could happen in California.
Well, were you surprised that people walked out? I mean, look, as comics, when something weird is happening in the room, I mean, why did people walk out? Obviously, was it their moral objection, or were they afraid the guy's going to come back in with a pistol?
No, I think they walked out because they got afraid of what was going on, that somebody would get hurt. Listen, my friend that's dead, Eric Douglas, he said one Monday night at the Comedy Store, he said, "I hate nigger night," and a black man got up and knocked him in the head with a chair.
Wow.
Yeah.
But wasn't it billed that way at the club?
What?
He said, what did they call that at the club? Why did he say that?
No, it wasn't billed.
He's kidding.
No, that was black. You know that.
And who hit Eric Douglas in the head? Was it Kirk or Michael? I mean, I kind of knew Eric. He tried to take me to a club one night and party.
He sued the Comedy Store. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I actually never even heard about that.
Yeah, he got hit. No, he got hit in the head with a chair.
And he sued for lack of security?
Let me tell you something. It's a very dangerous, you're in shark-infested waters if you start playing around with that word and you don't have any experience with the word, or you haven't been around with the word, and it gets to be real weird. The youth react to it differently. I mean, I have youth in my house, and they want to kill him. I mean, for my generation, I mean, we're always marching and we want to sit down and discuss it. If you can't ride on the bus, and we'll all talk about it. The youth, they want to turn the bus over and burn it. There'll be nobody around.
This is Tanya Free. Ted Nugent, who has endorsed Mitt Romney, is standing by his inflammatory comments that included that he would either be dead or in jail by next year if President Obama is reelected. He accused the government of wiping its ass with the Constitution. Should Mitt Romney repudiate these comments and disavow the support of Ted Nugent? Go to TanyaFree.com to respond to this week's question of the week.
That's TanyaFree.com. On air, online, and on point.
And welcome back to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed. And we certainly want to give a shout out again to Ed Forchion, aka the NJ Weedman, and definitely go to his website, njweedman.com. And if you can, contribute to his legal defense fun. And so we appreciate him taking that time out to give us that interview today. Now, tomorrow night is Wednesday, of course. That will be April 25th, 2012 at 10 o'clock p.m. You will get to hear a interview I'm going to do with James Flaming Eagle Mooney, who's been a guest on the program before, and he comes to us on this night via Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Definitely check out their website. They're against prohibition of all drugs, and which would include marijuana. But their website is www.leap.cc.com. No, I messed that up. Let me get that address out again. It's LEAP. It's www.leap.cc. It's not .com. It's .cc. Or you can just go to copssaylegalizedrugs.com, and that'll take you to the site. Tune in tomorrow night as we, I guess, continue another program on trying to end the drug war, because I agree with the things that Mr. Forchion said that I brought up about slavery never being abolished, and he's right. A lot of people commonly think that slavery was abolished, but the Constitution, again, left it in place as penalty for crime. And if they could trump up some charges on you and put you in prison and make money off of you, don't think they won't do it. There's a reason that the United States leads the world in incarcerated citizens. So we're going to close out the program with some Public Enemy, Can't Trust It, and definitely hope to hear from you. Hope that you'll tune in tomorrow night, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, right here on BlackTalkRadioNetwork.com.
That started in slave ships.